Mother's Day, Father's Day, Valentine's Day, and Earth Day. Days that aim to sell shit and sell you on the idea that something or someone is important. For a day. Most recently, it was International Women's Day. Like Earth Day, this holiday actually started with a purpose. Activist roots calling for equality and women's rights. International Women's Day started as a socialist political event, but has since devolved into mindless memes and shallow displays of giving a shit. A corporatized commemoration of women's achievements brought to you by BP and MetLife. Seriously, they're sponsors. And despite the collective power of huge corporations and international reach, women didn't actually wake up on March 9th with more rights, equal pay, or less subjugation. Nope, we still live in a country where feminism is a bad word. But in reality, we need the word feminism. A lot more than we need a fucking day to arbitrarily say, yay, women, and then go right back to a status quo devoid of the tenets of feminism, i.e. equality. Just like we need more actual education for and about African Americans, as opposed to just 1 month where we throw up an MLK quote while simultaneously shrugging our shoulders over the death of yet another unarmed black kid. We don't need a Black History Month. We need Black history every month. The pigeonholing of African American history into a commemorative month just furthers the separation of blacks in our society. Guess what? Black history is American history. The longer we celebrate that divide, the longer we can push aside their problems as separate from American problems. We are sexist. We are racist. The first step to fixing a problem is admitting that you have one. And I don't see a lot of alcoholics successfully fixing their problem by creating a sober holiday. Covering up our country's deep-seated flaws with wrapping paper and a bow doesn't make what's inside any less flawed. It only gives the unaffected a shiny distraction and the affected a polished piece of shit. So BP, MetLife, keep your shiny fucking holiday. I want change. From tweets to marching in the streets, this is Act Out. Welcome to Act Out. I'm Eleanor Goldfield, and this is your tipping point. A couple of weeks ago, the Department of Justice released a report saying that it would not pursue federal civil rights charges against Darren Wilson, the cop who fatally shot Mike Brown last August, due to the fact that there wasn't enough evidence to disprove Wilson's statement that he feared for his life. I'll let go of the obvious question as to why you couldn't have then shot him in the leg, or maybe explain how the fuck he was shot in the back, but I digress. At the same time, the DOJ released a second report documenting widespread racism in the Ferguson Police Department. Well, yeah, no shit. Since the report, a municipal judge, a city manager, the police chief, and 2 officers have all resigned, and the Missouri Supreme Court has stripped the city of administration over its municipal court. Meanwhile, Attorney General Eric Holder says that he's prepared to dismantle the entire Ferguson Police Department if necessary. And there are many who feel that such a move is necessary. Last Wednesday, March 11th, protesters gathered outside Ferguson Police Department to peacefully but resolutely continue their push for justice, calling for the removal of Mayor Knowles and the restructuring of the Ferguson Police Department. Tweets and posts protested the absurd severance package awarded to Chief Jackson, which includes a full year's salary plus health care. A package that the majority black community will have to pay for, despite the fact that he's leaving because of the extreme racism displayed by his department under his watch. But unfortunately, these stories have been overshadowed by another, one with all the hype and shine of that glossy wrapping paper. If you take the plunge into the mainstream media abyss, this is what you'll know. 2 officers were shot, one in the shoulder, one in the face. Both have been released and are recovering. You'll hear that the day after, mainstream media reported on the intense manhunt underway to catch whoever did this. Now, is it wrong to report this? Of course not. Is it wrong to decouple your story from the stories of those who were actually there? Is it wrong to separate this instance from the underlying issues and movement that seeks justice for buried bodies and voices? Yes, and yes. What I have a problem with is not that the media covered this act of violence. What I have a problem with is the grotesque amount of attention given to 2 injured policemen in comparison to people shot and killed by policemen. What I have a problem with is the 007 treatment of a random act of violence, exacerbated by ignoring or undermining the straight, full story, particularly as it's told by those who were there. So instead of me trying to fill in the holes that mainstream media missed, let's take this narrow view of one incident, give it context, give it space in the place and time it happened. Let's take a look at what the people on the ground really saw and experienced. In the age of digital communication and social media platforms, this is your news. Don't let the core issue of a movement like Black Lives Matter be drowned out in a dizzying din of manhunting, finger-pointing, and vapid guessing by the white and out of touch. Beneath this media frenzy, protesters are still working to combat the racist realities, in spite of comparisons to violent thugs, angry mobs, and messengers of an illegitimate movement. The irony is, of course, that by vilifying protesters and the Black Lives Matter movement, media proves just how far this country has to go before justice is served. Primary and first-hand accounts are the story of this time, this movement, this issue, not the nutbags at Fox News, not lunatics like Andrew McCarthy who characterizes a peaceful protest as a mob, and likens Holder's remarks to a mafia don telling his henchmen to go whack a guy. Not the NYPD officers who tried to bury the truth of Eric Garner's murder by manipulating Wikipedia and harassing those connected with the filming of Garner's death. Not officials and the media who tell you that it was 12-year-old Tamir Rice's fault that he was shot and killed by cops while playing with his toy gun. Not the LAPD who explained away shooting and killing mentally ill Azelle Ford or the homeless man on Skid Row. You are types and clicks away from the full, true story of what happened in Ferguson, New York, LA, Ohio, and countless other places in the US. You are types and clicks away from digging up the root causes of why Darren Wilson was not charged, the deep and dirty flaws of our justice system. And that brings me to this week's Google That Shit segment. So here's how it works. I give you a phrase to Google. You hit pause, Google, click, read or watch, laugh, cry, and then come back and I'll be waiting right where you left me. So Google this shit. Why it's impossible to indict a cop. Click on the first link, take a few minutes to read, and I'll see you back here. The more you know, right? And to add to your arsenal, Ferguson resident and organizer DeRay McKesson has developed several platforms where you can not only follow events as they unfold, but sign up to hear breaking news from the Black Lives Matter movement, get involved in your local actions and events, and see what's happening across the country. Check the end of this episode to see the exact links. You can also go to a site called Mapping Police Violence. It lists the 302 Black lives lost to police violence in 2014, along with other stats and facts. Let's use these online tools to make a difference offline. Black Lives Matter, and that's not a slogan. It's a call for justice. It's a raised voice for the silenced, a raised fist against a raised gun, a call that people of all colors should say, post, tweet, and share. Moving on, here's a fight that you may want to step to the front lines of. The fight to get money out of politics. The evil that begets all evil. Particularly since you're about to see how those front lines can consist of banner drops, guerrilla-style street art, and life-size board games. Pretty badass, right? This activist art is curated, if you will, by filmmaker John Wellington Ennis, whose latest film, Pay to Play, is not only a comprehensive and engaging breakdown of this snake pit of corruption we call government, but a call to action, an invitation to get creative, an infectiously inspiring story of how activism can be one hell of an adrenaline rush, and how changing minds and shifting paradigms can be as badass and fun as putting up posters in the middle of the night, with nothing but your heartbeat and the buzz of streetlights echoing in your ears. From reality TV producer to activist, street artist, and documentary filmmaker, I spoke with John earlier this week to hear not only how he made that shift, but also on how art plays a role in the push for socio-political change and what's next for him and his art.
During the Bush years, my friend Holly Mosher and I were talking, and we just had so much. We were just so fed up at that point, and we were so outraged, and there's no way to really communicate to people at that point. The internet was still very nascent, and so we talked about doing documentary as a means to inform and educate and pull people in. And so once I started to realize how dark some of these issues were, I thought comedy might be more of a better aperitif to try to go with a lot of these things. And so as I was able to gather more and more, Holly was able to encourage me to take on bigger and bigger issues. And so that's how we ended up with something fun year making like Pay to Play, which, covers everything from running for office as an outsider to Ohio to the Powell memo, to the Koch brothers, to ALEC, to local municipal laws regarding graffiti in Los Angeles.
And you don't just do street art in terms of, posters and imagery. You also do banner drops and things like that. Talk a little bit about your the variety of street art that you do, from the Monopoly board to the banner drops and things like that.
For the anniversary of Citizens United this past January, we did a banner drop at rush hour in downtown Los Angeles. And it's amazing to see people end up, cheering as they're honking as they're driving by, and they know exactly what it is that you're doing. They just happen to be driving by, or they're stuck in traffic at that moment that you're doing it. And so it's symptomatic of how much more support and enthusiasm is out there that people don't know about. And so what's so interesting about putting up stuff about money in politics or corruption in street art is that when people see it, post it, or respond, they're really happy that you're doing it. They're inspired. And you see that it's that kind of energy that gets shared with other people that makes a movement and creates a public perception. And these are the ways that one person, with very little, just a piece of paper put up in public, can end up fostering a wide-held perception.
Which sounds a bit like what happened with you, is that you were documenting street artists, and then you were like, oh shit, I can actually do that. I can be a part of this movement in that way. What would you say to people, as somebody who made that transition yourself, what would you say to people who say that the problems are too big, where do I begin? I'm not a street artist, I'm not a singer, I'm not theatrical. Like, how can people plug in the way that you did in a way that parallels to what they might already be doing in their daily lives?
Well, I think it's really important to realize that everybody's voice is important and unique and distinct. and needed. I think that people realize that wherever they are, their place, their time is a very unique story that nobody else can comment on. And so when lots of people can understand this, then we start to get more of a shared storytelling community that creates the elevated consciousness that I think we started to see after Occupy.
Absolutely. And speaking of looking for something on the pay-to-play site, you have a huge list of resources discussing solutions and how people can get involved. And of course, I'll put that up on the show as well. But what's next for you in terms of the film and also in terms of your activism?
Oh, well, that's a really good question. Thanks. I've been so blown away personally that so many people have responded to this film. And so it's really exciting to see that this becomes an event and an organizing tool and a way for everybody to get recharged and have that sort of fun in a way that you don't really always get in activism. So what's next for me, I hope to be able to bring this film to campuses because a lot of the fast-paced storytelling, the graphics, the subplots about monopoly and street art, these are part of the elements that I'm hopefully will appeal to younger audiences and engage them at that really crucial time when they're looking for things in the world and they're looking to get engaged and they want to find answers to why the world works as it does. And it sort of took me like 20 some years since I was that age in college to figure that out and be able to tell it. So if I could just help kids now see that in college, that'd be great. I'd like to do more documentaries about politicians and corruption, and I think that and making it funny. And I think I'll never run out of material.
Thanks to John Wellington Ennis for joining me. For more information on the movie and an incredibly comprehensive list of ways to get involved in the movement to get money out, solutions on how it's possible, and of course, where to see the film, head to paytoplay.tv. Now we just go a hop and a skip away from the corrupting influence of money in politics to the corrupt corporation in this week's Low Life Scum Award.
You low life scum.
Pink slime, antifreeze, silly putty, and non-decomposing burgers aside, but seriously, that said day 171. Fucking hell. Anyway, that aside, McDonald's is also damn despicable on issues other than their list of ingredients. A couple of years ago, word started to get out about how they treated their workers, or rather, mistreated. Thanks to the workers themselves standing up to these corporate asshats, the entire nation took note of subliving wages, overtime work without overtime pay, Christmas and Thanksgiving hours without holiday pay, and pushed back, both in the streets and through their wallets, gifting McDonald's with record low sales. Was that enough for McD's to change their ways? Nope. Instead of responding with wage hikes and maybe health care or even just some fucking overtime, McDonald's went the Low Life Scum route and decided to instead offer a budgeting tool to help workers allocate their slave wages. Take a look. Believe it or not, the insanity and unbridled dickery does not stop there. McDonald's is suing the city of Seattle to stop the minimum wage hike that will go into effect on April 1st. Essentially, last year Seattle found that it's actually impossible to live on $9.47 an hour, the statewide minimum wage. So, in accordance with reality, Seattle voted to up the minimum wage to $15 an hour. That might sound familiar to you, as Fight for 15 has been the rallying cry for minimum wage workers across the country. Still, McDonald's is rising above this cacophony of the poor and angry workers, standing up to those socialist dickheads in Seattle, and using the 14th Amendment to back its case. Yep. It's using an amendment passed to secure equal rights for freed slaves in order to argue its case to pay slave wages. In short, McDonald's claims that it is being treated unfairly compared to small businesses who will have more time to adjust to this pay increase. In light of this and everything else, it is with ease and great disgust that I award McDonald's the Low Life Scum Award of the Week.
You low life scum.
To learn more about the Fight for 15 and to get involved, check out the link below. Finally today, let's dive into the shadowy world of mass surveillance, the server caves and mysterious caverns of electronic all-seeing eyes. CISPA is on this week's Frontline segment. Now, follow me on this treacherous trek through the boring verbiage of mass surveillance, and I promise you, there will be an anti-spying rap video at the end of it. You have my word. So let's go. In 2012, the House voted to pass CISPA, the Cyber Intelligence Sharing and Protection Act. It then died in the Senate, but was later revived by the House in 2013, where it passed, but yet again failed in the Senate, where lawmakers refused to even bother with the zombie bill. But much like Michael Myers or Freddy or Jason, this terrifying horror story of a bill just won't fucking die. And thanks to our 1984 cast of characters in Congress today, CISPA has sprung back to life and is lurching its way through the Capitol. This time, lawmakers are using the Sony hacks as the springboard for their dive into your most private areas. They're attempting a rebranding as well, calling this one CISA, probably meant to both bore us to death and throw us off the trail. But it's the same shit. Same vile ingredients carefully blended to throw us into a digital fishbowl. The law, as it's written, allows corporations, government, and intelligence agencies to share everyone's digital information, like sex toys at an orgy, with the added bonus of zero liability and oversight. Also a lot like an orgy. That orgy in particular, with the tambourine, and I'm pretty sure that's a goat. By the way, as an aside, I found that image with this title. That might also be worth Googling. But back to CISPA. It would allow the government to dig even deeper into your electronic fingerprint and demand access to personal information such as emails and internet history without needing to provide a search warrant or go through any legal proceedings. Oh, and I almost forgot. These government agencies can then use anything they find via these unconstitutional searches to fuck with you. Be it locking you up for sharing art on Facebook, writing a blog post, or searching Chamber of Commerce Orgies. I don't need the government to know about that. And they shouldn't know about any other searches, pornographic or otherwise. We should be allowed to let our dirty minds wander freely. Let them go spelunking in the endless expanses of the World Wide Web, without feeling self-conscious about being creeped on by some dude in a suit and an earpiece. CISPA isn't, nor has it ever been, about stopping hackers. It's about mass surveillance on an even larger scale than we already have today. We've stopped CISPA in the past, and now it's time to suit up for the sequel to the sequel of this zombie epic. Go to CISPAisback.org in order to sign the petition and share it with your friends on social media. Also, take a look at the tweets up next, followed by memes that you can post and share, or as always, come up with your own. That's our show for tonight. Please follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and subscribe on YouTube. Be sure to get in touch with any ideas and artful activism that you see out there. The last slide will be all the sites that I mentioned in the show. But first, as promised, here's your anti-surveillance wrap, brought to you by Shahid Buttar.
The NSA breaks the law every day. It doesn't matter who you are or what you say. They monitor your phone calls and emails anyway. Corrupt Congress and courts paving the way. There's a lesson you'll learn someday. Watch what you say. See, they spy on your mind, record your calls for posterity, commit daily executive crimes with impunity. They're the authorities here to keep us safe until the boot ends up on your face. It's the NSA against the Constitution. We the people are the ones our government is abusing. We can force any agency to make a new choice when we build a movement, each raising our voice. They lie about the origins of the evidence. They lie about the numbers of Americans watched. Immense too large for them to calculate, they sigh. A self-serving lie by the government's eye. Computing power unmatched in history. Presuming the power to wiretap you.